Part 3. Margaya went straight to the town bank. He refused to transact his business at the counter. He had to do it sitting in a chair in the manager's room.
But he found someone talking to the manager and he had to wait outside for a moment. It was a crowded hour. Margaya never liked to do his transactions through the counter window.
He despised the clerks. It was a sign of prestige for a businessman to get things done in a bank without standing at the little window. That was for the little fellows who had no current account but only a savings bank book.
He had the greatest contempt for savings bank operations, putting in money as if into a child's money box and withdrawing no more than 50 rupees a week or some miserable amount. Not through checks but by writing on those pitiful withdrawal forms. Having a current account seemed to him a stamp of superiority, and a man who had two accounts, account number 1 and account number 2, was a person of eminence. He saw waiting at the counters petty merchants, office messengers, and a couple of students of the Albert College attempting to cash checks from their parents.
Hearing their inquiries, Margaya felt, why do their parents send these boys checks which they won't know how to cash? He thought, what do these people know of checks? What do they know of money?
They are ignorant folk who do not know the worth of money, and think that it is just something to pass into a shop. Fools! He pitied them.
He felt that he must do something to enlighten their minds. He would not be a banker to them, but a helper, a sort of money doctor who would help people to use their money properly with the respect due to it. He would educate society anew in all these matters.
He hoped he would be able to draw away all these people into his own establishment when the time came. The reason why people came here was that they were attracted by the burnished counters, the heavy ledgers, the clerks sitting on high stools and so on, and, of course, the calling bells and pin cushions. Once again show, mere show.
Showiness was becoming the real curse of all business these days, he thought. It was not necessary to have anything more than a box for carrying on any business soundly. Not necessary to have too many persons or tables or leather-bound ledgers. All that was required was just one head and a small notebook in which to note down figures if they became too complicated, and above all a scheme.
He knew that he had a scheme somewhere at the back of his mind, a scheme which would place him among the elect in society, which would make people flock to him and look to him for guidance, advice and management. He could not yet say what the scheme would be, but he sensed its presence, being a financial mystic. Whatever it was going to revolutionize his life and the life of his fellow men.
He felt he ought to wait on that inspiration with reverence and watchfulness. A peon came up to say, the manager is free. All right, I'll be coming, said Margaya.
He liked to give an impression that he was in no hurry to run into the manager's room at his call. He looked through some papers in his pocket, folded and put them back, and sauntered into the manager's room. The manager was a very curt, business-like gentleman who had recently been transferred to this branch.
Sit down, please. What can I do for you? He asked. He was a man soured by constant contact with people who came to ask for overdrafts or loans on insufficient security.
The moment he heard a footstep approaching, he first prepared himself to repel any demand. So, according to his custom, he put himself behind a forbidding exterior for a moment, and assumed a monosyllabic attitude. I wish to open an account, said Margaya.
The manager could not take it in easily at first. He still had his suspicions. This man might be anybody, might have come to open an account or to open the safe. This hostility affected Margaya too.
He said at once, you don't seem to want a new client. If that is so. He pretended to rise. Sit down please, said the other. We have instructions not to admit too many new accounts, but I should like to know.
You would like to know whether I am a bankrupt or what? All right. I am not anxious to have an account here. I want it here because it is quite near to my own business place.
Where is it? You will know it presently. Really?
What business? Margaya would not answer this question. The more the other pressed for an answer, the more he resisted.
Let me tell you this, it is a very specialized business. My clients are chiefly peasants from the villages. I have a great deal to do with their harvests and advances and so forth. To further inquiries by the manager, Margaya refused to give an answer. I cannot give any details of my business at the moment to you or to anyone.
No one will be able to get these things out of me. But let me tell you, I have come here only to deposit my money and use it, not to take money out of you. I can quite see what is at the back of your mind. Now tell me whether you would care to have my account here or not.
Now he was taking out his trump, namely, the check given to him by Lai. If you don't want me here, give me cash for it, but if you think I am good enough for you, start an account with this. Have you an account anywhere else?
I don't answer that question, said Margaya out of sheer financial pugnacity. He could have told him that he had quite a sizable account in Commerce Bank in Racecourse Road. The bank manager felt that here was a man who knew his mind and felt a regard for him. Of course I will open your account here, he said with sudden warmth.
What does a bank exist for unless to serve its clients? Quite right, Margaya said. I quite appreciate, he said patronizingly, your precaution as a banker.
Only a businessman can appreciate it in another businessman. He had a feeling that he had after all found the right place for himself in life, the right destination being I.O. Market Road. It was a block of 4 shops, each about 12 feet square, with a narrow corridor running in front which was thrown in as a sort of grace to the tenants.
The other 3 were taken by a tailor whose single machine went on rattling all day and night over the din of clients who came to demand their overdue clothes. And next to it was a board announcing itself as the Tourist Bureau, having a number of small chairs and a few benches, and a 4th shop was a doctor's, who claimed to have practiced under a great seer in the Himalayas and to be able to cure any disease with rare herbs. Margaya was pleased with this spot.
It was a combination which seemed to him ideal. On the very first day he came there, he felt that these were just the men with whom he could live. They are not people who are likely to interfere with my work. Moreover, it is likely that people who come to the tailor or the doctor or the tourist bureau are just the people who have some surplus cash and who are likely to be interested in my business too.
It was Drive Pal who put him into this setting. Dr. Pal sought him out one day at his house just as he was bullying his son over his lessons. He walked in saying, I didn't know your house exactly, but just took a chance and came over.
I was just sauntering down the road wondering whom to ask when I heard your voice. Margaya had a slate in his hand and there was a frown on his face and tears in his son's eyes. He got over his confusion and affected a smile. Oh, doctor, what have you been doing with yourself?
The doctor looked at Balu and said, you have evidently been trying to teach this young man. Don't you know that for parents to teach their offspring is prohibited in all civilized countries? He then said to the boy, as if taking charge of him immediately, now run off, little man.
He turned ceremoniously to Margaya and added, of course with your permission. Balu did not wait for any further concession. He swept aside his books and ran out of sight as if a bear were behind him. Margaya's mind had still not come to rest.
He kept looking after his son and mumbled, you have no idea how indifferent and dull present-day boys are. Oh, no, don't tell me that. Remember correctly, do you think you gave an easy time to your father or the teachers? Just think over it honestly.
It was not a line which Margaya was prepared to pursue. He brushed aside the topic, remembering suddenly that he had not been sufficiently hospitable. He burst into sudden activity, and began to fuss elaborately over his visitor.
He jumped to his feet, clutched the other's hand, and said, Oh, doctor, what a pleasure to meet you after all these years. Where have you been all the time? What have you been doing with yourself?
What is the meaning of cutting off old friends as you did? He unrolled a new mat, and apologized, you know I have no sofa or chair to offer. Well, I didn't come to be put onto a sofa.
That is right. I don't like furniture, the type of furniture which does not suit us. We are made to sit erect with our feet dangling. I wonder, said Dr. Pal, if the prevalence of nervous disorders in the present day might be due to the furniture which has become popular.
In ancient days our ancestors squatted on the floor, stretched themselves as much as they liked and lived to be wise old men. Margaya could not understand whether the man was joking with him or was in earnest. He called his wife and said, Get 2 cups of coffee ready immediately.
My old friend has come. While waiting for coffee he said, Now tell me what you have been doing with yourself, doctor. Where have you been hiding all these days?
The doctor said, I had gone for a little training in tourism. Margaya was bewildered. This man was specializing in obscure and rare activities.
What is tourism? He asked. It is a branch of social activity, the doctor said. The basic idea is that all people on earth should be familiar with all parts of the earth.
Is it possible? It is not, and that is why there must be a specialist in tourism in every town and city. What is tourism?
Margaya asked innocently once again. The doctor viewed him with pity and said, I will explain to you all about it by and by one day when we meet in my office. Now tell me about yourself. No, you tell me about yourself first, Margaya said, with a vague desire to avoid the theme of himself for the moment.
There was at the back of his mind a faint fear lest the doctor should ask him to render the accounts of domestic harmony. He wondered if the man had hunted him down for this and he wished to be on his guard. He had hardly made up his mind as to what he should say if he broached the subject, when, as if reading his thoughts, Paul said, I came here some time ago, but didn't like to meet you lest you should think I had come after my book.
Margaya sniggered and said somewhat pointlessly, Oh, isn't it quite a long time since we met? Yes, ages since. I have been away for a long time.
You know I am no longer on that paper. I gave it up. It did not seem to me serious enough work.
I always feel that we must do something that contributes to the sum and substance of human experience. Otherwise all our jobs seem to be just futile. I also am about to start a new business.
Yes, I heard about it from the town bank manager, said Paul. The man seemed to know everything that was going on everywhere, thought Margaya with a certain amount of admiration. Margaya's wife brought 2 tumblers of coffee to the door of the kitchen and made some noise with the vessels in order to attract Margaya's attention.
Margaya said from where he sat, You can come in, it is my friend Dr. Paul. I have spoken to you about him. She was at once seized with fear whether the man was there in order to discuss another book on the same lines as the previous one.
She withdrew a little, and Margaya went over and took the coffee from her hands and carried it to the front room. The conversation languished while Drive Paul was relishing the coffee, and then he said, I heard from the bank manager that you are starting a new business. I just came to tell you that if you want a nice place on Market Road, there is one vacant in our block.
There is some demand for it. They went to 10 Market Road. Margaya liked the building when he saw it.
A man who made a lot of money selling blankets had bought up the vacant site next to the municipal dispensary and built these rooms. At the moment, the house was of 1 story. Eventually he proposed to add a first floor and a second floor.
The man himself had his own shop in one of the back lanes of the market, a very small shop stacked with rough blankets. He was a strong dark man with a circular sandal paste mark on his forehead. He sat there all day chasing the flies.
Flies come here, God knows why, Margaya reflected when he went to meet him with Drive Paul. They had to stand outside the shop and talk to him as he peeped out of his blanket stacks. At the sight of Paul, the other man brought his palms together and saluted.
He had evidently great reverence for learned people. How are you, sir? Dr. Paul inquired genially.
This is one of my greatest friends, he told Margaya in an aside, and added, You cannot imagine how much he has helped me in my most difficult times. Tut, tut, said the other from the depth of his woolen stacks. This is not the place for you to start all that. Don't.
Now who is this person you have brought with you? He is a friend of mine who wants to be your tenant. He is opening his business in a couple of days.
Am I right? He asked, turning to Margaya. With a sheet of paper, Margaya fanned off the flies that were alighting on his nose.
The man in the shop announced apologetically, Oh, too many flies here? What have flies to do here? Margaya asked, unable to restrain his question anymore.
The other replied, They have nothing to interest them here, but behind this shop there is a jaggery go down. There is a gap in the roof through which flies pass up and down. It is a great nuisance, and I have written to the municipality to get the jaggery shop moved somewhere else, but you know what our municipalities are.
He is himself a municipal councillor for this ward, Dr. Paul added, and yet he finds so much difficulty in getting anything done. He had such trouble to get that vacant plot for himself. I applied for it like any other citizen.
Being a municipal councillor doesn't mean that I should forego the ordinary rights and privileges of a citizen. The conversation went on with the sun beating down on their heads, and a feeling of still greater warmth was given by the sight of the heavy dark blankets all round. Margaya felt somewhat irritated that he was being made to stand in the sun all the time.
He suddenly told himself, I am a businessman with all my time fully booked. Why should I stand here in the sun and listen to this fellow's irrelevancies? He told his friend somewhat sharply, shall we get on with the business? Dr. Pal looked at him surprised for a moment and asked the blanket merchant, will you give the vacant shop to this gentleman?
Of course. The other said. If you want it, give it to him if you choose.
Dr. Pal turned to Margaya and said, take it. Margaya was unused to such brisk and straightforward transactions. He had always a notion that to get anything done one had to go in a roundabout manner and arrive at the point without the knowledge of the other party.
Margaya rose to the occasion and asked, what is the rent? 75 rupees, said the other briefly. 75.
Rather high, isn't it? Margaya asked, hoping against hope there would be a reduction from this stern and business-like man. Yes, if it were any other place, but here the spot has market value.
You can take it if you like. But if you are looking for a cheaper place, said the blanket man. I shouldn't be here, said Margaya, finishing his sentence for him.
I am taking it definitely from tomorrow. It pleased him very much to be able to speak up confidently in this manner.